Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. Let's talk about history. Where does history comes from? History comes from the Greek word historia, which means knowledge acquired by inquiries and research. It is the study of past events. It generally presents the known past. What is unknown is yet to be retrieved. The recording and analysis of experience of the society compress the totality of people's history. And now, why we need to study Philippine history? We need to study Philippine history in order for us to gather information about our country's history marked by important events, places, dates, and persons forming the growth of societies and distinction of culture. And to understand the internal and external pressure involved in the transition of societies and culture found in the country at different period of time. And also realize and avoid the mistakes committed in the past to guide the present and prepare the future. And last, to develop sense of identity and pride in being a Filipino. And now, who discovered the history? Herodotus is undoubtedly the father of history. He is also discovered the history. According to him, history is refers to the people of old times, and history is the study of past events. Okay? English historian was 12-volume A Study of History. Arnold Toynbee, that was 1934 to 1961. Based on his thesis that history reflects the progress of civilization and societies, he viewed the past as a succession of civilization rather than political entities. And another German philosopher, Marx, he asserts that the prevailing economic system determines the form of societal organization and the political and intellectual history of the epoch. Now, what does epoch means? Epoch is the date or the time or a period of time in history or a person's life. Okay, let's continue. Which does attribute action and events in history to economic motives. The struggle to maintain life is the most enduring motivation for any human activity. Marx wrote the Manifesto, which contains the statement of principles of the Communist League, embodies the materialist concepts of history or historical materialism. The Manifesto states that the history of society is a history of struggles between the ruling class and the oppressed mass. And Filipino nationalist, historian, and journalist Renato Constantino, that was March 10, 1919 to September 15, 1999. And according to him, history is the recorded struggle of peoples for increasing freedom and for newer and higher realization of the human person. It is about the story of man as the individual, but man as the associated man. Man interacts with nature and with other men, thus consciously changing his own perspective and to the same extent the system of environment. And I mentioned earlier the historians, and as a historians, they have also sources of history, sources of information. What is sources of history? Sources of informations provide the evidence from which the historian obtains facts about the past. In writing history, the historian not only relies on past thoughts, rather reenact it in a context of analyzing the documents and other records left. This is an indispensable condition in the quest for historical facts. Okay? There are two types. There are two sources of history, two sources of information. The primary and the secondary. What is primary sources? Primary sources provide a first-hand account of an event or time period and are considered to be authoritative. They represent original thinking, reports on discoveries or events, or they can share new information. Often, these sources are created at the time the events occurred, but they can also include sources that are created later. They are usually the first formal appearance of original research. Here are some examples of primary sources. Archives and manuscripts materials, photographs, audio recordings, video recordings, films, speeches, scrapbooks, published books, newspapers, and magazines, clippings published at the time, and etc. And the secondary sources involve analysis, synthesis, interpretation, or evaluation of primary sources. They often attempt to describe or explain primary sources. Here are some examples of secondary sources: journal articles, textbooks, dictionaries, books, political commentary, biographies, dissertation, newspaper editorial or opinion pieces, criticism of literature, art, works, or music. And that would be all, and thank you.